What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, bringing you incredible guests from all over the world, so sit back, relax, and tune in. My next guest is a U.S. Army veteran turned life coach that helps people break old patterns so they can thrive, not just survive. Please welcome Derick Johnson. Derick, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
I love your name. Like I said, it's my youngest brother has the name Derick, so it's weird to say Derick because I'm like talking to a brother.
Oh yeah.
So, you actually, well, congratulations or thank you for your service for being
I appreciate it.
Army. You thrived in the Army, but you didn't always thrive in life. You kind of have like a background that not everybody has had, and some that may have had don't always thrive and come out of it in the best way. So can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and what allowed you to overcome some of those things?
Yes, for sure. So number one, thank you again for having me. And in regards to quick background is I'm an Army brat. So my father was U.S. Army. He was 25 years. And my mother, she's always been a kindergarten teacher, probably at least 50 years now. So, and my mother's German and my father's African-American. So I'm bringing that up because their mentality is very focus-driven, professional. My dad was high-ranking. My mother was always the first one at every school for Montessori school. If people know about Montessori, the private schools. So she was always gung-ho in that. My dad was gung-ho military. So from the outside, both very successful parents in their field, in their industry. They were up at 4 or 5 a.m. working out. My mother would be in the living room doing Tybo tapes by Billy Blanks, Body by Jake, all those classic DVDs and cassette tapes, or doing the pool workouts with the weights. My father would be running or lifting weights. So generally, that's all I saw growing up was early wake up, workout, take care of the body, take care of the mind, and just went from there. So that was a natural thing. So from the outside, it was always seen as successful family, mix, living in Florida, blah, blah. But what nobody knew is that behind closed doors, both parents did not get the help or do the inner work that they needed from their trauma because they were the oldest of several children. So they had to grow up quick. So they saw family abuse on both sides, all that. And at the end of the day, or after the cookout or after a long work day, between the hours of 9 p.m. to 1 a.m., there would be the madness at home. So that happened between like the age of 11 to 17. So just seeing that 300 days a year, and hearing things that kids shouldn't hear.
Right.
But I always saw that as a challenge. I don't know where it came from, but I was the youngest. So I have 2 older sisters, but I was the youngest. So I feel like the physical or mental release that they put onto me was a test.
Yeah.
And I always gravitated towards movies, autobiographies, biographies of people that went through things worse. And I wouldn't pretend my situation didn't exist, but I always saw it as a challenge. Like I would tell myself, I'm Batman in the cave, going through hell to push through this. I would always play these games in my head, and I just would never complain because my last thing I wanted to do was bash their reputation while I was a kid and a teenager. So I would just keep it to myself. My friends didn't know anything. Nobody knew anything. I didn't want to complain. So what I did, I would just release via fitness, get a calm mind, work on my faith, and then just show up for others. So I was always like the quote unquote dad of the group or the class leader or whatever, just naturally chosen as the person because I was always calm because at home was so crazy, glass being broken, yelling, like just 300 plus days a year. So when you're at school, you're like, this is nothing. Like I could easily give a presentation or lead a basketball team. So that's the upbringing there is having both successful parents in their field. The discipline was there, but again, just the self-help on their part or whatever was missing. Just didn't get it. So once the last glass of wine or beer or whatever was drank, that's when they would release until they would fall asleep. And then the very next morning, hey, where do you want to go have breakfast? Where do you want to go have lunch?
Oh, wow.
And the first few times this happens, that child is going to be like, do you not remember that 3-hour window when there was just madness in the house? And then the more it happened, you realize that they would just black out. They wouldn't remember it. So I felt like that was like a cheat code in regards to being calm under pressure, where I felt like that forged my career as an athlete in the military and everything else. It all went back to those dark nights. Now I just see it just all as a training ground. But when you're in it, you're just like, what is going on? What's happening? But in hindsight, it all makes sense. And even while I was in it, I would always see it as I'm not the problem. They have something going on.
Yeah.
Some would call that consciousness. Some would call that discernment. Whatever it was, I felt like I was gifted with that because I would just not be angry at them. I would just be neutral and I would just use it as fuel. I don't know where that came from, but I would always just say thanks in my head because tomorrow's workout is going to be amazing. Tonight was dark, so I'm going to crush it in the gym. Thank you. That's just like the mentality I had as a child.
Well, that's good because not everybody can think that way. You know, a lot of young people would get depressed and probably stay themselves and not. You know, I think maybe the difference there is that your parents were high performing individuals, so you got to see both sides. You know, so
Oh, yes.
I'm the oldest in my family, and my father was very abusive towards my mother, and I got the brunt of all of that. So when I was younger, I was kind of getting, you know, I was taking it from my parents, and so I know what
Yes.
like it was hard for me. You know, I resorted to working out quite a bit too, but I kind of went inward. I was like an introvert, and there was at one point that I don't think I've ever shared this on the podcast, but I did try to kill myself at one point because it was so bad. And I had to go to the hospital and all that stuff. And just, yeah, I think I was 13. It was hard. So for me, you know, I going through that, you know, that was hard for me. So good for you for being able to rise above that and use it as fuel for yourself because not everybody can do that.
Exactly. I appreciate it. And I would just absorb my mind with music, movies, or books that related to things that were worse. So I would just always say, one, we're not living in Syria. We live in Florida
Yeah.
at that time.
Yeah.
We live in Florida. I have 4 bedrooms, 4 houses, a screened-in pool. Like
Yeah.
we had everything that somebody could ask for. So I would never complain outwardly. In my head, I would talk to myself, but I was like, I have nothing to complain about. Like some of my friends did not have their family, did not have all their limbs. Like there was always just something worse. So it would humble me to not complain. Where at the age of 11, my dad was always reading books, listening to not audiobooks, but cassette tapes. So I remember briefly hearing my first cassette tape by Tony Robbins. I was 11 years old, which sounds crazy to even say, but he said, if my mother gave me the love that I wanted, I wouldn't be the man I am today. And I was 11 in the backseat of my dad's car, and like he's just driving, not paying attention, and it just gave me chills. And I was like, wait a minute. And then I just started diving deep into Tony Robbins things just because I related to like the relationship he had with his mother and everything. Teach their own how they feel about him, but he definitely saved my life and many others. But just a perspective shift of seeing that, I was like, they did go through those things where the darkest nights where the screaming and all that would happen, or she would pass out and just all this stuff, cops would call, like all these different times that it happened, I would realize that they would look through me. They would not look at me. So they would see somebody from their past only while they were just very drunk. And then the next morning they would see their son. Hey, good morning. What are we doing today? And then eventually I just got trained to be prepared for that. So I don't wish that on people, but I actually paved the way for everything. But I did realize quick that they weren't looking at me, they were looking through me. And once I solidified, and I didn't know exactly at that time what they went through, but I would just say, you know what? Since I don't hear the words, I love you at home, I want to make sure that I give love to people, whether that's strangers, whether that's my classmates, whether that's my teammates or whatever. So anything that I wasn't receiving at home, I would always give to others. So I was just that quiet kid who really wouldn't say much. I wasn't nervous, but I was just always half asleep because you didn't sleep much because they were yelling till 1 a.m. But I would just show up to class and just be kind of zoned out. But then if the teacher would call me, I'd always somehow just be on point and answer it. And then I was like, this is interesting. But I realized that my friends or classmates that would get nervous when they're called out or nervous to give a presentation, I thrived in those areas. Because in my head, I was like, what's the worst that's going to happen? They're not going to hit me. They're not going to do this. Am I going to die doing this thing? I would always go a very extreme in my mind to make everything else seem easy.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from, but I was doing that.
Able to deal with the pressure because it's a lot of pressure for a young kid to deal with at home because it's like, what do? You know what I mean? And it's a scary place to be. And so for you, your mechanics just work differently. So that's amazing.
I appreciate it. And I really think that music, outside of everything, music and faith help the most. But I will say dark music helps. So like Eminem, Linkin Park, Marilyn Manson, whoever, Tupac, like whatever genre it is, I don't even care about the genre, but I would just listen to stuff that would give me a rush and give me chills because I would exercise to it. And after I'd work out, I would just be calm.
Yeah.
And then I would just show up for others, classmates, coworkers, teammates. And it was just a fulfilling thing where I knew that there would be a path to be a coach. I didn't know what exactly, but then I just always related to people that went through things. So an example could be, I would sit in public, be at a bus stop, be in an airport or whatever, just strangers would just naturally come up. Hey, how are you doing? And they talk to me for 30 minutes and they'd like pour into my cup.
Yeah.
I'd pour into theirs. And then I'd never see them again. We wouldn't even exchange information. But I realized that happened a lot starting at the end of middle school and then throughout my life. And I always thought about, I was like, I feel like people that went through hell a lot, they relate to that. They can see it in somebody else's eyes and they sense somebody's calmness.
Yeah.
And then they just approach them and just, they dump on you. Sometimes the timing is bad, but they're like, hey, I'm there for them. So I truly feel that that is a gift that a lot of people have that went through a lot of traumatic situations. We can just actively listen, because nowadays people don't really listen to somebody when they're actually trying to release. They're just on their phone, or they're like, oh, I was listening, and they just zone out. So I think people that can meet someone who's actually actively listening and present with them, that could change their life. Because I was that person before as well, where nobody in family, none of my friends would listen if I'd open up about it. Where I was like, you know what, I'm just not going to say anything. But then I've met individuals that became my mentors that I could just open up to. And it wasn't like emotional conversations. It was just like, hey, I just need to let this off my chest. Can I do this? And once I saw the power in doing that for me releasing, and then me being able to let someone else release, I realized that everything was connected and intertwined. So as a kid and teen, I was just always in a higher perspective because I was just ready for anything. Because you're kind of on edge. Yeah. Some are on edge in a paranoid way. I was just on edge in a, I'm ready for anything.
What's going to happen next?
So exactly. So I was just always like going, my friends were like, dude, you notice everything. And I would never say anything. I was just like, yeah, I just love military movies. And I wouldn't say anything, but I was like, well, I never know a glass is going to get thrown at me or somebody's going to do something crazy. So all those things were truly a blessing. So I always saw it as like a training ground at home.
That makes sense. And I can kind of relate to that too. A quick couple of questions about, did you ever talk to your parents about what you went through?
We did. My mother and I, at the age of, I was 19, came home from college. So just quick backstory. With a German mother, you're a professional cleaner. So you got like borderline OCD. You can clean everything. You can cook, clean.
My mother loves German, so I know.
Exactly. So, so like growing up, all my friends would come to my places and they're like, dude, your places are always clean. Like whether it was their house, my apartments, whatever, they're like, dude, how's your stuff so organized? And I was like, it's just a natural thing. But with that being said, is anytime that there'd be a cookout or a get together, it was always at our house. So I'd always help my mother prepare for the cookout, prepare for the party. If somebody had a graduation party, whatever, we'd be the host home. So I would always prepare. So this is one of those weekends. I came home, I was helping her prepare. And then this was a couple hours before the guests arrived. She put me into the kitchen. She's like, hey, gotta tell you something. And she was sober at that time. It's still daytime. It never happened in the daytime. And then she's like, hey, all those times when I was screaming? I said, yes. And then she told me what happened. And I remember she like fell into my arms crying. And then I felt like 1,000 pounds come out of my chest. So with her being used and abused as a kid and as a teen and all that. And then she told me, I saw other men. I did not see my son's face. And then like in that moment, I was like, I knew you were looking at somebody else, because it happened hundreds of times. But I was like, those eyes like almost turned black. Like I would tell my friends, like, I don't know if a demon took her over or she was just screaming at somebody else. Yeah. But on a spiritual standpoint, I was like, she's looking at somebody else. And then she told me who and what happened and who she would see. And then like, she didn't say sorry. I didn't say I forgive you. We knew there was clarity. She knew I would be fine with life. Wow. I knew that she felt good releasing that. Yeah. We kind of hugged and then just went about life and just act like nothing happened or whatever. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it just is what it is. But at least for me, I had clarity because I knew that there was something. Because I never got arrested, never got a referral, maybe on a roll. Yeah, I did the stupid stuff like sneak out like any other teen. But like there was no reason to get that extreme to the point you're screaming until you pass out. But, excuse me, but I realized that that was just because of that upbringing. But once she mentioned that, then that basically like solidified everything where I was like, it made sense. Yeah. My conscience knew there was something. I didn't know exactly what it was, but at least now I know proof. So I'm not going to hold any anger or resentment.
That chapter, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
it's like closure for you understand a little bit more now where she was coming from. Are your parents still together?
Yes, they've been married, I want to say almost 40 years now. So yes.
Wow, good for them. They got through it all.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
sure
definitely.
I'm sure they're not doing that crazy stuff anymore. At a certain age, it's like it just gets too old, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about you. Well, tell us a little bit about your service in the Army. You had a very successful career there. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, for sure. So in the U.S. Army, I did two things. One was satellite communications. So I was always a tech nerd and I always wanted to learn gadgets, the newest phones, laptops, and all that. But essentially, satellite communications, you provide internet, radio, all the comms for everybody else. So it was interesting. So like that's that sector. And then the other sector was master fitness trainer.
Okay.
So my friends would always be like, "You're the buff nerd," because that
Yeah.
was just me. I loved the analytics and numbers, and I
Good
loved working
combo
out.
though.
So like, I'd be on the laptop, then I'd watch Arnold Schwarzenegger and Bruce Lee shows and movies and read their books, and that was how my brain worked. But in the military, I did satellite communications, and the other side was I would train soldiers that came back from injuries,
Oh, wow.
deployments, maybe if they had a divorce and they were binge drinking for a while and they got off substances, whatever the case may be, I would help them to get back into a better physical and mental state. And so I did that with soldiers, but deep down, I knew I wanted to do it with the general public as well. But having those experiences in the military
Yeah.
and then also with the personal life and just people, not saying everyone, but a lot of people were just comfortable to speak to me about whatever they went through because I would just be blank. I would just be neutral. I wasn't sad with them, wasn't excited, just, and they're like, wow, this is what I needed, just an active listener. So just be in coach mode.
Yeah.
So yes, so that was that in the Army was a fitness trainer and then also satellite communications. And then I did various schools like air assault, which is propelling from or rappelling from a helicopter. And the various schools, I always wanted the physical and mental tests. So like an example could be I used to have a fear of heights. So I faced fears by
Yeah. That's
actually facing
exactly.
it and doing it and getting over it because that's the only way to overcome it. So yes. So besides that is the career was very monotonous, just like most careers, do the same thing, all that, and provide value. But some of the things I always wanted to test myself in was going up to the board. So a board, at least in the U.S. Army, is if you want to be soldier for the year, airman for the year, whatever branch somebody's in, it consists of three things. One, physical fitness tests, the main one, then other variations.
Okay.
Two is a written test, written exam, but you take those exams after you're sleep deprived, food deprived, everything else. So it's a mental test to see if you can still do the writing and whatever's necessary. And then third is to speak to the board. So the board will be all the higher rankings. There's at least 5 or 10 male and females. You walk up to a door, you pound on it, you walk in, there's one chair, you stand in front of the chair, you salute everybody, say what you need to say, and then they let you know when to sit down. Once you sit down, they basically just drill you with questions. So it's like a verbal exam. And that's when most people would crumble. That was my favorite part because I would look everybody in the eyes and they would see that I wasn't nervous and they'd be confused sometimes. And in my head, I was like, you guys are scared of these people? And I would just like play this game. I respected everyone, but in my head, I was like, this is nothing. My 5'6" mother would kick everyone's ass in here. So like, I'll just play this game in my head and like my 6'2" father. So like growing up with crazy parents just set me up for those situations where most people would be nervous in. I love those situations because I love the pressure of it.
Sure.
So I did it more so for myself to see if I could do it. It wasn't for attention. Like we never posted on social media about it. It was more so within the community or in your company or platoon. But I just did it as a mental checkbox where I was like, okay, I did this school. I was able to do that. Perfect. I never wanted to leave anything on the table in regards to military or personal life. I always just wanted to go all out because extremism runs in my family, drugs or alcohol. So I was extremism in fitness, helping others, or just not sleeping much. I was always extreme about those things.
Wow.
Not saying that's good or bad, but I had to
Well,
choose a positive thing.
those are better options than the
Yeah,
alternative.
exactly.
I mean, I'll take all that over drugs and alcohol. So now,
100%.
after the military, you are a life coach and trainer. So when did you start? When did you start that?
So I was a personal trainer since the age of 15. So in Florida, you could take, at least back then, you could take tests early as long as you had the parental guidance sign off. So I was making training plans in middle and high school for friends and families, and I was just obsessed with anatomy. But it was also, that's how my brain worked. I had to tap out of the madness and show up better for others. So I wanted to learn everything that I could. And it just always interests me seeing the body, the way it works, why some body types can do this or can't, vice versa. So all through high school and college, I was training people. But the reason I got into life coaching is during college, I would see clients that I worked with months or years ago, and I saw that he or she gained the weight back or lost the muscle. They basically went backwards. Internally, I was annoyed with them. I wouldn't say it. But then psychologically, I said, I didn't give him or her the tools that they needed to shift their mentality.
Wow.
So I flipped the script and I said, well, I can't keep letting people down. I don't want to be the come and go trainer that's just like, oh yeah. I didn't want to be just in this bubble of everybody else. So I got into life coaching and I got the certifications. And then from there, I could dive deeper and be able to pinpoint, why does she really want to get this physique? It's not for the summer. It's because she was bullied when she was 12 and that's in her head. Or at 16, he had an eating disorder because his dad called him fat. Like all those real scenarios that they don't tell their family or friends, we would dive deep and then break those barriers so we could start to thrive and not just feel like we're just surviving. So an example could be some of my clients are highly successful in business, but they maybe have drug or alcohol addictions, or they're successful, but they let their body go because all they did was focus on business, or they lack public speaking. So on the life coaching, it's more so their personal goals, which they don't really open up to the people. But once they do start to tackle those, they feel much freer.
Yeah.
And everybody senses their calmness, where it's not just on the fitness standpoint. It might just be, hey, she wants a bigger butt, or he wants a tighter chest, or whatever the case may be. Everybody gets happy in their own way. But I've always enjoyed seeing the fulfillment in somebody's eyes and their body language, that they were able to release a certain trauma, whatever it was. And to them, it could be huge. So it's never about anybody else's opinion, but seeing that in somebody is fulfilling. So I've always loved perspective hopping. So I would see their 10.0 when I meet somebody, I can already see their 10.0 in them, and I work with them to get them to that version. And then as their confidence goes up and I see they're dropping off all the vices or all the trauma from them, I feel like psychologically I'm healing my inner child, because it's a fulfilling prophecy where like I help them, it helps me. I'm not doing it from a selfish way, but it's just interesting how it's all connected, where I'm like, he's thriving, his kids, his wife is going to be happy, his coworkers. So it's a positive ripple effect. Yeah. So it feels empowering and fulfilling. So that's why I went this path, is because I knew that other fields wouldn't fulfill me. Yes, I might have done well in other fields, but deep down, I didn't want to be like 40 or 50 and say, all right, I have the money, I have this, I have that, but I don't feel fulfilled. Right. So I knew this was going to be the only thing to fulfill me, which is helping others.
I think that the life coach and a trainer is a good combo. I'm a certified, I'm a life coach and a certified personal trainer. I'm too much of an empath, so I can't train people or
Okay.
Because I get too involved in their success, and if they don't succeed and they don't follow through, like it really affects me emotionally. And so I like having the skills myself, being like having the skills as a life coach. It was a total game changer for me when I started. Just the way you talk to people and acknowledge them when you talk to them, it when you repeat back something that someone says to you, like I heard you say, is so empowering for them, and it just makes it allowed me to really improve my leadership when I was vice president in my previous life. So let's just talk a little bit about your process really quick. So I looked at your website. It's amazing. I love seeing all like the success stories on there and the testimony.
I appreciate it.
It's very cool. So if somebody's interested in working with you, what does that look like? Do you have a consultation call? Can you just walk us through the process?
Yes, for sure. So there'll be two paths. One could be on the website. They could click the button, fill out an application, and then I would shoot them a text. I'm very personal. I'm one-on-one with everything. And the next step, we would just hop on Zoom and learn about their goals. Sometimes I am the right fit. Sometimes I'm not. If I'm not, I point them in the right direction. So I do everything one-on-one. I do have a couple group setting things, but my preferred way is one-on-one. So that'd be step one, the application, or if they just send me a message on Instagram or Facebook, we go from there. But the whole intent is we would hop on a call, talk about their goals, and then see exactly what they want to do. And in terms of one of my favorite quotes is, I'm not for everyone, you're not for everyone. So I'm just blunt with people. If you don't like the F-bombs, I'm not your guy. If you do like the F-bombs in the occasional drill sergeant mode, then hey,
Yeah.
I might be your guy.
I like it. I like it. And so when you work with someone, you include that life coaching skill along with the training, right? Just to kind of help them be the best version of themselves.
Yes. So essentially what it looks like is two things. One, they get access to my training app, which they would have their workouts. So an example could be maybe somebody has a performance goal. They want to do a Tough Mudder or run a 5K. Others, they're just like, I just don't know what to do in the gym. I don't really have a physique goal. I just want to be confident to actually walk into the gym. Some it's just a general goal. I just want to know what I'm doing. Others, they have very specific. So that's step one is the body. The mind is when we hop on Zoom or if it's in person.
Yeah.
That's where we dive deeper into exactly what they want to work on. So on those strategy sessions via Zoom, that is where the quote unquote magic happens. So we dive deeper into the eating disorder, the bullying, the divorce, whatever it is, or that inner child where they're like, why can't I succeed in anything I do? Because I keep talking to myself negative. So whatever it is, we break that on our conversations. And then in between each call, I just give them action steps. And then as we go along, I show up doing my part, they do their part. We're guaranteed to go up together. So it's exciting to see.
Yes, I love it. Where can people find you, connect with you, and learn more?
So they can find me Instagram, Facebook, anywhere. Just Fit with Derick 2, Fit with Derick with the number 2, or just my name, Derick Johnson. It's the same picture on everything. So they could search it anywhere.
And your website?
Website is fitwithderick.com. Fitwithderick, DERICK.com.
Perfect. You guys, I'm going to put those links in the show notes. So if you connected with Derick and you like his style and you resonated with his story, do not hesitate to click those links, go follow him on social, shoot him a message, and just see where the conversation takes you. Derick, this is the part of the show where I like to ask for last words of wisdom or advice. What would you like to leave with us today?
All right. So first thing I'd like to say is if people, any moment that you don't want to get out of bed, you're about to hit snooze, you're about to lay back on the couch, you're about to push it to next Monday, you're about to push that thing to tomorrow. Whenever you're about to neglect something, say the phrase out loud and in your head, people depend on me. People depend on me. Whether it's your kids, clients, customers, family tree, whoever, whatever it is, your pets, start to think of others more because as humans, we're all selfish to an extent. I want to sleep till then. I got to have the perfect amount of caffeine. I got to have this. The Wi-Fi is slow. This sucks. Everything is, we make stuff bigger than it is. So if we tap out and just say, people depend on me, we can show up better for others. But it all starts with you, whether that's your morning process, whatever it is, whatever you have to do to get yourself into an empowered state in the morning, do it in the morning, prime yourself for the day so you're more proactive than reactive. The worst feeling is hitting snooze 3 times, getting the text and getting an email that this person needs you. Then you're like, it's not even 10 a.m. I'm about to pull my hair out. What is going on? So put yourself first. And that is how you show up better for people. Take care of your body, take care of your mind.
Love it.
And then the last thing would be create the man or woman that you would be proud of and give him or her to the world. Create the man or woman that you would be proud of and give him or her to the world.
Woo, yeah, I love that. Derick, thank you so much for sharing your journey, your story, and how you are impacting the lives of others. God, obviously,
I appreciate it.
Beautiful gift by just getting through your childhood in a positive way. And you're just a shining example of what resilience looks like. So thank you so much for what you do.
I appreciate it. Thanks again for having me.
You're welcome. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, review, comment, share, all those good things. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic guests.